All right, welcome, friends. As you can see from my screen here, I'm going to be discussing or analyzing this state police issue. So just bear with me. It's going to be lengthy, a little bit, at least about. It's going to be lengthy, but I'm going to try my best to shorten it to make sure that you guys can understand me properly. Now, this state police issue have been going over quite, to be sincere. The way it's been handled is kind of disappointing. When it comes to state police, okay, the debate over creating a state police is one of the most, consequential constitutional and governance issue the country has ever faced since the return of democracy rule in 1999. It is not simply a policing question. Not simply a policing question. Never should it be. It is more than a policing question. All right. It is a question about federalism. It is a question about democratic institutions in Nigeria, accountability, elections, human rights, and also the distribution of power. Okay. Now, the timing close to 2027 election adds another layer of concerns because security institutions plays a decisive role during elections. Okay, so any reform that changes who controls the armed law enforcement should be designed with exceptional care and also broad public participations. This public participation is what is lacking in this context. The citizens are not involved in crafting the law that is going to govern them in terms of policing in Nigeria. Okay, so that is very, very sad that you are undertaking one of the consequential constitutional and governance issue regarding police, legislative, and the people are not carried along. There is no contribution or participation in crafting a law of policing in Nigeria. Now let's look at the background, the context of the background. Nigeria currently operates a centralized what? Police system under the Nigerian Police Force, okay, which is constitutionally controlled by the federal government. Now, critics argue that this model has struggled to respond effectively to local insecurities, including banditry, kidnapping, terrorism, okay, communal conflicts, okay, court violence, and also armed robbery. In these areas, the federal police has failed. All right. So supporters of state police argue that a country of more than 220 million people with 36 states is too large and diverse to be effectively policed from the federal capital, Abuja. So the need to decentralize is necessary, but the question is the timing. Opponents argue that decentralizing police powers with strong safeguards could empower state governors to use police as political instrument. So if there is no strong safeguards, okay, that empowers state police, that is going to throw the balance of power to the governor, okay, to use the police as a political instrument for intimidations and other nefarious activities in the states. So both perspectives have legitimate concerns. For those that are against, and for state police have a legitimate concerns. But we're going to go into details. I'm going to go into details to tackle both areas. I'm going to look into the for and against. What are the concerns, and then also profile solutions or recommendations if we have to enact state police at this time of elections. Now, first of all, what are the potential advantages of state police? What are the advantages of state police? One is better local intelligence. Let's look at advantages, and I'll go to the risks of state police. So I'm going to discuss both ways. All right. So potential advantage of state police. Number one is better local intelligence. Why do I say better local intelligence? It borders on understanding local languages. With the creation of state police, it will be easy for the state police to understand local languages in terms of communications. Two, know local geography. Creating a state police, okay, recruitment of state police within the state or the community helps in understanding the local geography. Thirdly, understanding community disputes. Various communities in Nigeria have different ways, norms they settle their disputes. Each area have their different rules and regulations or culture in which they settle dispute. So state police will understand community disputes and how to resolve it. Okay, and the fourth is identifying criminal networks more quickly. Identifying criminal network more quickly. Now, local knowledge can improve crime preventions and also investigations. That's one advantage of creating state police. Now, the second one is faster response. Why is faster response an advantage in creating state police? Now, today's centralized systems often delays deployment because command originate from where? The federal hierarchy. So if there's an issue in a state, you got to wait for a deployment or a command to come from the federal capital to the state before that issue could be attended. So if you decentralize a federal police into state police, one is faster response because now you don't need to wait for federal response from the capital to carry out your investigations or try to settle disputes or insecurity in the states. So state police could respond more rapidly to kidnappers, okay, communal violence, farmer-herder conflicts, court violence, and rural insecurity. Creating a state police can enhance rapid response to kidnappings, okay, communal violences, farmer-herder violences, court violences, and also rural insecurity. All right. Now, what is the third one? Is community policing. Community policing is very important in terms of creating state police. Why? Because properly designed state police could strengthen, okay, relationship between what? The police and the citizens through certain tailored mechanisms. What are they? Number one is neighborhood policing. And number two is community partnership. Number three is local accountability. And number four is crime prevention programs. That is what is called community policing. So I'm still discussing the advantages of what? State police. Let's go to the fourth one is reduce burden on federal police. When you create state police, you are reducing burden on federal police. The federal police currently perform almost every policing function in a country of 36 states plus the FCT. Okay, so state police would allow the federal to focus on. So if we create a state police, it's going to allow the federal police to focus on these areas of policing. One is terrorism. Two is cybercrime. Three is organized crime. The fourth is border security. The fifth is interstate crimes and also national intelligence. So you are now, once we create state police, it's going to reduce the burden on the federal police. The federal police is going to concentrate all its powers on these key areas of terrorism, cybercrime, border security, interstate crime, and also national intelligence. thereby allowing state police to undertake the remaining functions. Okay, now the fifth one, why it is important or advantageous to create a state police is what? True federalism. True federalism. Now, the current model we have in Nigeria, we don't practice true federalism. There's no true federalism in policing structures in Nigeria. Now, as currently as it is instituted now, there's no true federalism. So when you create a state police, properly enacted, crafted legislative state police will have what is called true federalism. Currently, Nigeria has no true federalism in policing structures. So when you create a state police, it must have true federalism. And what do I mean by that? Many federal systems, including the United States, Canada, Australia, Germany, and India, to mention a few, okay, combine national and subnational policing in different ways. Okay, now let me give you guys an example like in Canada. In Canada, we have the federal police, which is called the RCMP. The RCMP is the federal police. Now, Canada system has a parliamentary system, not a federal system, whereby so each provinces has their own premiers. So Canada has 13 provinces that make up Canada. Now, RCMP is the federal police. Now, each province has its own police structure. Say, for instance, in Ontario. Ontario is a province on its own. It has Ontario Police, Provincial Police, OPP. So the federal police in Canada is RCMP. Then each province has its own police. Ontario is like a state. Under Ontario, we have other sub-nations, other cities under Ontario that make up Ontario, like Ottawa, like Toronto, okay? Barrie, Peterborough, all these areas make up Toronto. So Ontario has its own policing force called OPP, Ontario Provincial Police. Now, under Ontario, every city has its own police. So Ontario has its own provincial police called OPP. Every city in Ontario has its own police. So Toronto has its own police. The city of Toronto has its own police. City of Mississauga has its own police. Every city inside Toronto has their own police. And they have their boundaries. They cannot go beyond their boundaries. So Canada has a federal police called RCMP. Now, all the provinces has its own policing structures. Under the province you live, every city that make up that province have its own what? Policing structure. So the OPP is accountable to the Premier of Ontario. The city police is accountable to the mayor of that city. So the Toronto police is under the authority of Mayor of Toronto, while the provincial police is under the jurisdiction of the Premier of Ontario, while the RCMP, which is the federal police, is under the Prime Minister of Canada. Each have its own rules and regulation, boundaries they cannot exceed. Say, for instance, you committed a crime, maybe you live in another city, and you commit a crime, and you're living in another city. That city cannot leave their promise to come to your city and arrest you. It's the same Canada. That city, that state cannot come from there to arrest you in another province. They have to send a notice to that province. They work in collaborations and say, one of your residents in your city committed a crime. They share files. That city, they will provide the city with all the necessary files, the address, everything about that corporate suspect. That city have to take the undertake the investigation, the arrest, and everything, and then transfer them to the other state. That's how it works. I'm just giving you guys the synopsis how federal system works. So Nigerian federal structure could similarly support multiple levels of law enforcement, provided appropriate constitutional safeguard exists. So these are some of the potential advantages of creating state police. As I said, I'm going to analyze on the pros and cons, the advantage and disadvantage of creating state police, because both of you have legitimate concern on creating state police. Now, what are the major risks in Nigerian current context? What are the risks in Nigerian current context? Now, the greatest concern is not the concept of state police itself, okay, but how it might operate within the existing governance challenges. We already have a federal police in Nigeria. Creating a state police, how will it fit into the system with the federal police? How would it alleviate the concerns of the citizens? What are the risks? You have to analyze. You have to list the risks, discuss it, and provide solutions. How does creating a state police at this critical time fit into the model we have now in Nigeria federal policing system? Okay, one is political capture by governors. This is the fear every citizens of Nigeria have been saying, is the potential capture by governors. Governors currently now have enormous powers, even with the federal policing system. So creating a state police and then empowering the state governors to handle them is like, giving them more ammunition to use it anyhow they want. So one is political capture by governors. This is perhaps the most serious concern every citizens of Nigeria have at this moment. Governors already influence local government administrations, okay, state electoral processes indirectly, as it may be in some contexts, all right, state finances, appointments, and what traditional constitutional institutions. These are the things currently state governors can do now with the powers they have. They control the local government institutions. They control the state electoral processes. They control the state finances. They control the appointments. They control the traditional institutions currently with these enormous powers. Adding direct control over armed police could increase the risk of what security powers are used for political purposes. So giving a governor that has these enormous powers already with state police, now at this critical time juncture that we are preparing for elections, you are handing state governors with additional more powers is without any safeguards, is creating for an anarchy. So, adding direct control over armed police could increase the risk that insecurity powers are used for political purposes. What are the potential consequences? What are the potential consequences? One is intimidating opposition candidates. Two is disrupting opposition rallies. Given a governor a state police, he or she could use it to disrupt opposition rallies or ban rallies in the states, intimidate opposition parties in the states, and have also a selective arrest. If you don't belong to my party, I'm going to arrest you. Okay, harassment of journalists. If you write nonsense or refuse to take down certain publications, they could use state police for your arrest. Journalists. Okay, suppression of protests. So giving them more powers with state police, they could suppress protection in the states because the police are under their own controls. So they will suppress protests. The next one is voter intimidation, and that is why everybody is shouting at this time around, why legislating state police during an election season? Okay, voter intimidations. So during election, even isolated abuse could undermine public confidence. Would undermine public confidence. So that is one major risk in Nigerian current context of legislating a new police structure in Nigeria. Let's go to the second risk, is election manipulation. Let's go to the second one, is what? Election manipulation. During elections, okay, during elections, police officers are expected, during elections, police officers are expected to do what? Protect polling units. What are they protecting? So, manipulating a result while they are inside, preventing the opposition parties getting entrance. So they protect the polling units, escort election materials to the governor's residence and they write the results, and also prevent violence. This could be positive or also negative. It could be protecting the election result in the vicinity of the elections for a smooth transition of elections, and also for transportation to the next level of coalition of results. It could be positive, it could be negative. So the governors could use it either way to manipulate election results. So arrest offenders regardless of political affiliations. So for instance, if you are an election observer or a police officer or a military officer and refuse to dance to the governor's tune and allow him or her or the agent to write falsified result, you could be arrested regardless of your political affiliations because you refuse to dance to the tune of the governor in falsifying the election results to his or her satisfactions. So if state police leadership lack operational independence, if you are creating a state police and they lack operational independence, there's a risk that officers could face pressure to favor those in what? In power. And that's a legitimate concern. Now, what are the possible abuse? What are the possible abuse of this state police during elections? Selective enforcement of laws. Okay, selective enforcement of laws. You could be, if you are an opposition leader, you could be arrested a day before the election. Okay. 2, restricting opposition campaigning. 3, unequal protection of political parties. And 4, interference within election administrations. All these are the possible abuse of power if allow police structure to be under the control of governors. Now, the third one is human rights violations. Handing over a governor, a state police, you also handing them human rights violations. Currently, with the federal policing structure, there's a lot of abuse of human rights. So giving them that avenue of legislating a state police and handing over control of state police, this could enhance, and not even enhance, this could triple the human rights violation offenses in the state. 1, Nigerians are expressing repeated allegations of what? Unlawful detention. Currently, with the federal policing system, most Nigerians are detained unlawfully without even trials. Torture, okay, extortions, excessive use of force, and also extrajudicial killings, even with the current structure of the federal policing system. So imagine creating a state police whereby the governor is going to be under the control of the governor. So creating 36 additional police organizations without strong oversight could multiply what? The problems rather than solving them. So that is why I keep saying, before creating a state police, there are certain foundations that must be laid. There are certain structures that must be put on ground. Safeguards must be put on ground before legislating a state police. Okay. Now, the fourth one is ethnic and religious bias. So, for instance, just imagine, Nigeria diversity is a strength. but it can also become a source of tensions if public institutions are perceived as favoring particular groups or religion or or tribe. So in some states, there may be concern that recruitment or enforcement could become influenced by what? Ethnicity, religion, and political affiliations. So before you can even enroll or recruit to the police, state police, they first of all determine your ethnicity, where you come from, which local government you come from, okay, or your religion. Are you a Christian? Are you a Muslim? Or what is your particular affiliations? Your local government your local government does they vote for me? Do you vote for me? Do you belong to my party? If you don't belong to my party, you could not be even recruited or employed in the state police. So there could be ethnic and religious bias in this. Okay, so that's my number 4 risk factor in this state police. There could be also what we call local patronages. So without safeguard, this could deepen social divisions between cultures or between communities or between tribes. The 5th one is weak accountability. Weak accountability. A major concern is that misconduct may go unpunished if oversight institutions lack independence. So if you are creating state police and then the people that you put in there employed to monitor them doesn't have an independence, there's no safeguard of that independence to monitor that state police, then it's just worthless. So if complaints are investigated only within the same state structure, accountability may be what? Limited. And number 6 is corruption. Number 6 is corruption. Why do I say number 6 is corruption? Is that corruption already affects policing through the practice, even at the federal levels. Bribery, extortion, illegal checkpoints, selective enforcements. This already persists in the federal structure, talk less of the state structure. So simply decentralizing police does not automatically address these problems of bribery, extortions, illegal checkpoints, and also selective enforcement. So without structural reforms, corruption could become decentralized as well. There should be structural reforms before setting up state police, backed by judicial law. I'm going to come into that. Number 7 is unequal security across the state. Unequal security across the state. Now, whether states may be able to fund is another issue. Okay? Wealthier state may be able to fund their policing system very well. The poorer state might not be. So there'll be uneven state police all over the 36 states. So the wealthier police state may be able to pay better salaries, modern equipment, forensic laboratories, and advanced training. Those are the wealthier states. They have the money to fund the state police. What about the poorer states? The poorer states may struggle to provide equivalent resources, potentially leading to uneven policing standard across the federation. Now, why the timing matters. You see, everywhere people are saying timing. Why do you have to legislate, enact a new state policing at this particular time? Why the rush? Why are you not taking your time to make sure you get it right? Or delay it till after the elections? Why the timing matters. Why the timing matters? Let's go into it and see why the timing matters. Now, introducing a new policing system shortly before the presidential election carries additional risks. And what are those additional risks? Challenges include recruitment of thousands of officers. It could be teetered. Rapid training, command restructuring, political pressures, operational confusion, and legal uncertainties. So large institutional reforms are generally more stable when implemented well in advance. Okay, well in advance of major elections. So you would this state police should have come since 2000 and what? Immediately after 2003 elections. Give it a year or 2 years to be enacted properly, the law, written properly, public consultations, public comment contributions, and then you enact it, and then see how it works before the election. So allowing time to establish procedures, oversight, and public confidence should have been taken into considerations, but enacting a state police close to an election period becomes more of a disaster or something sinister. Now, this haven't argued for and against creating state police. What are my recommended safeguards? This is key. Listen properly, this is key. What are my recommended safeguards in creating state police? All right. In Nigeria, okay, establish a state police. All right. Strong legal and institutional protection would be what? Essential. There will be strong legal and institutional protection is essential in creating a state police. Now, there are about 13 recommended I gave about 13 recommended safeguards. So let's start with number 1 is Independent State Police Service Commission. Independent State Service Commission. All right. Why do I say that? Is appointment should not rest solely with governors. Appointment should not rest solely with governors. All right. The commission could include representatives from judiciary, civil society, traditional institutions, human rights organizations, professional bodies, and security experts. There should be, it's a must, independent state police service commissions. Appointment should not be solely with governors. No governor should be allowed to rest with that power of appointing or recruiting state police. Rather, the commission should include representatives from what? Judiciary, civil society, human rights organizations, traditional institutions, professional bodies, and the security experts. Okay? The governor should not have authority over appointment of any or dismissal of any police officer. Okay? Number 2 is Independent Police Complaint Authority. Independent Police Complaint Authority. Why do I say that? Is every state should have an independent body empowered by law to receive complaint. Okay, to receive complaint. Am I making any sense? To receive complaint. And when you receive that complaint, what do? Okay. Investigate misconduct, recommended prosecutions, publish annual what? Report. Its members should have security of tenure and also operational independence. Its members must have security of tenure and independence of operation. Anything short of that is waste of time. The control, appointment, and dismissal of police officers should not be with the governor. It should be taken away from the governor. And whoever is in that commission must not be appointed by the governor also. All right. So now let's go to the third one, which is the constitutional protection against political orders. I call it constitutional protection against political orders. The Constitution should be explicit prohibit political deployment of police officers. 2, interference in an investigations. 3, election-related directive from elected officials. Okay, police officers should be legally protected when refusing unlawful what? Orders. Let's go to number 4. Fixed tenure for commissioners. Fixed tenure for commissioners. Governors should not be able to dismiss commissioners at will. Removal should require 3 key things. Removal of any police commissioner require 3 key things. 1, proven misconduct. The conduct must be proven. 2, independent investigations. 3, approved by an oversight body. All right, so let's go to number 5. And I told you I recommended a safeguard at 13. Let's go to number 5. Merit-based recruitment. Okay, recruitment should be transparent, competitive, independently supervised, and publicly advertised. Okay, political patronage should be what? Prohibited. So any recruitment of any state police must be merit-based recruitment. Number 6 is national professional standards. National professional standards. There should be uniformity in training of police officers all over the country. Despite that each state have its own state police, but the uniformity must be conformed to the same standard. Okay? To the same standard. Although policing may be decentralized, okay, national standards should remain consistent regarding 1, training. The same training that happens in the East, any state in the East must be the same in the North, in the West, in the South. Firearm use. Any state police officer must be trained in accordance of the law of using firearm. There must be uniformity in all the 36 states. 3, investigation must have uniformity. 4, human right. Okay. 5, evidence handling. 6, ethics. These are core national standard. Must be national standard in all 36 states. This standard should be enforceable nationwide. Now, number 7 is federal oversight during national elections. Federal oversight during national what? Elections. Now, one possible safeguard would be to require the security operators or operation for presidential and National Assembly elections be coordinated under an independent national election security network with clearly defined rules for federal and state police and oversight by appropriate institutions. Now, any such arrangement any such arrangement would need to be established transparently in law to avoid creating new avenues for political influences. Okay. Should I repeat it again? When I say federal oversight during national elections, what I mean is one professional safeguard would be to require that security operations for presidentials and National Assembly elections be coordinated under an independent national election security network with clearly defined roles for federal and state police and then oversight by appropriate institutions. Okay? Any such arrangement will need to be established transparently in law to avoid creating new avenues for political what? Influences. Let's go to number 8, digital accountability. Nigeria is lacking in this area. They still carry files up and down. And that's why you can go tomorrow, they tell you your file could not be found. That is gone. There should be digital accountability. All officers should use body-worn cameras, GPS track patrol vehicles, electronic arrest controls, digital evidence systems. These measures can reduce opportunities for abuse and improper transparency. The GPS track patrol vehicles is necessary. If you go to the Western world, like in Canada, every police car is monitored, is GPS tracked. They know their locations. Every police vehicle is tracked, is GPS monitored. They know where each and every point the car is. They know your patrol routes, and that is necessary. Okay, 9 is strong financial accountability. Annual independence audits should be mandatory if you have a state police. Budget should be publicly available, and also procurement should be what? Transparent. Anything that doesn't have an accountability is just waste of time. You create a new system, there must be an accountability. Okay, so we are at number 9. I have 13 recommendations, so we're going to go into those 13 recommendations and then we'll take it from there. And then I would like to hear from you guys if I omitted anything. Do I make sense in what I just discussed here? All right, so let's go to number 10. Is legislative oversight. Now, State House of Assembly should exercise oversight, but because legislatures may be dominated by the governor's party, additional checks is required, such as judicial review, independent audit institutions, and public reporting can help strengthen what? Accountability. What about number 4, independent prosecutors? If you create a state police without creating an independent prosecutor, you're just wasting time. There are things that need to be structurally in place, like independent state prosecutors. Okay? Police should not effectively determine which politically sensitive case to proceed or who belongs to what party to proceed. Independent prosecutorial authority can reduce the risk of what? Selective justice. Let's go to number 12, is severe criminal penalties. So once you create a police structure, you enact it, you enforce it, there should be what? Is severe penalties for violators, for those who disregard the law, the rule of law. The law should be established clear offenses and meaningful penalties for election intimidation. If you're a police officer or anybody, governor, you are using police officer for election intimidations, illegal detention, torture, political deployment of police, unlawful arrest, or voter suppressions, there should be listed offenses and meaningful penalties accompanied in those legislative enactment. Number 13 is protection for whistleblowers. Protection for whistleblowers. Police officers should be protected when reporting corruptions, political interference, election manipulations, and human rights abuses. Okay. Number 14 is judicial authorization. So having said all this, you have to bless it with judicial what? Authorizations. Sensitive actions such as surveillance, prolonged detentions, or searches in specified circumstances should require judicial what? Authorizations, except where existing laws what? Provides. Okay, provides. Okay, except where existing law provides narrowly defined emergency powers. Strong judicial oversight helps reduce the risk of what? Abuse. Now, citizens' participation. citizens' participation. A reform of this magnitude is likely to be more legitimate and durable if citizens are meaningfully involved before implementations. Public participations include public hearings in all 36 states and the FCT, consultation with civil society and professional associations, engagement within traditional and religious leaders, input from youth and women's organizations, publications of draft legislation for the public comments. Broader consultations can improve the quality of legislations and strengthen public trust. Okay, now possible implementation strategy. How do we implement state police? Because not all states can implement state police with the rest of the states. But it is the responsibility of the Legislative Assembly and the executives to map out implementation strategies. And here are my recommendations. Rather than establishing state police nationwide at once, policymakers could consider a phased approach. One, enact a constitutional framework first. Enact a constitutional framework first. Secondly, establish independent oversight institutions before operational deployments. Thirdly, recruit and train officers to national standards. Fourth, pilot the models in selected states that meet predefined governance and accountability benchmark. Select some states and rule them out and wait for some time and see what happens. Okay, conduct independent evaluation before expanding the system to the rest of the states. This would allow lessons to be incorporated before nationwide implementations. And what are my overall assessments to all this is that the question is not whether state police are inherently good or bad. Okay, their success depends on the institutions, laws, and oversight that surround them. If you create a state police and did not back it up with the structural basis that comprises the laws and the oversight, it's like making a foundation in the middle of an ocean, in the middle of a sea. The wave is going to blow it away within seconds. So in Nigeria, there are credible arguments that more centralized, localized policing could improve responses to insecurity and make law enforcement more responsive to communities. At the same time, introducing state police is in an environment where corruptions, political enemies are there, political differences are there, election period is around the corner, okay? With a weak accountability, remains signal concerns carries real risks, particularly if implementations coincide with major election cycle and if robust safeguards are not yet in place. Before you start creating state police or ruler, make sure those safeguards that are just enumerated are there. A durable state police system will require constitutional protections, independent oversights, transparent recruitment and financing, enforceable human rights standards, and also mechanisms that insulate policing from partisan control. With those protections, decentralizing police powers could simply relocate existing structures remain the same. So if without the protections, everything I just discussed here, without the protections of decentralizing police power, you go ahead and start creating police power. It's like what you're doing is you are simply relocating existing governance problem from the federal level to the state rather than solving the problem. So the safeguards are going to be there for you to have a very good, effective state policing. So friends, this is where I'm going to stop for now and leave me your comments and let me know if all I have just listed or discussed here in this video makes sense. Let me know. If it's the right time to create a state police. Both the pros and cons, those for and against, have a legitimate concern if we should proceed with a state policing, but it is important to understand that you need, you need to make sure the safeguards are there. Okay? You have to make sure the safeguards are there. Without it, you're just wasting time. Okay? So, if you guys have any question, let me know. Okay? If you guys have any question, let me know. All right, so I'm going to see you guys in my next, video. So keep watching, and hopefully I'm going to read your comments and then also drop another video. So that's my analysis on state police. Hope to see you guys next time. All right. Bye.